Hey, what's going on, guys? UFC Vegas 83 Song Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez just ended, and this is going to be my full card post-fight. I'm going to go through every single fight on the card and give you my reaction and breakdown. Starting off with the first fight of the night, Talita Alencar versus Rayanne Amanda. Alencar gets the split decision, and honestly, I disagree with this decision. I thought Amanda clearly won the first and third round, and even you can make an argument for giving her the second round as well. Amanda just landed the harder shots. She just landed the harder shots. She did more damage. She was snapping Alencar's head back. The second round was kind of close, and Alencar landed some shots on the feet and then got a takedown in about 2 minutes or like a minute and a half of control time. So I can understand maybe giving the second round to Alencar. But I thought bare minimum Rayanne Amanda should have won this fight 29-28. And I think there's even an argument to make for 30-27. I don't know what these judges were looking at. This was a horrible decision in my opinion. But overall, just a super low level fight. So it's hard to really get worked up about it because neither one of them looked particularly good in the striking. Neither one of them looked particularly good in the grappling. At one point, I think it was in the second round, Alencar ended up on her back. I think she slipped and fell. And Amanda tried to wave her back up, and she's just crawling across the canvas, dragging her ass like she's Claudio Puelles or Neil Magny. And it was just, overall, it was just a real lackluster fight, and not really all that exciting at all. Moving up on the card, we have Tatsuro Taira versus Carlos Hernandez. Early Taira slipped off a kick. Hernandez followed him to the ground, which I didn't expect. Taira almost reversed position, kind of ended up on top for a second, but Hernandez scrambled out. They ended up back on their feet. Then they ended up in the clinch, and Hernandez was kind of winning a little bit in the clinch. Hernandez decides to look for a throw, ends up on his back, and then just gets dominated from there on out. Taira took his back with ease, took full mount with ease, was flattening him out, busting him up, looking for a rear naked choke. Wasn't able to find a rear naked choke. And, you know, you have Hernandez who isn't able to escape the position, but eventually makes it to the bell. Then in the second round, early in the second round, Taira stings him badly with a right hand, followed up with the left hand, dropped him badly, then just swarms him on the ground. Hernandez is like diving in on a single leg, looking to try to recover, but Taira just keeps smashing him with hammer fist over and over and over again. And the referee finally jumps in. I thought it was a bit of a late stoppage, but overall, Taira looked really good here. I think Hernandez is kind of underrated, has decent striking, and Taira went out there and basically finished him on the feet. I know, technically the TKO ended up happening on the ground, but Taira's hands look really crisp in this fight. Obviously, he has excellent jiu-jitsu, obviously still really young. And then in the post-fight calls out Melquizael, which I absolutely love that matchup, even though Melquizael has a fight booked against Perez. But Perez, like 9 out of his last 10 fights have been canceled. And Melquizael said, look, if Perez pulls out, I'll take on Taira. That is a straight up banger. But Taira's young. He's getting better with each fight. So I think Taira could be a future contender in the flyweight division and gets a massive win over Carlos Hernandez where he looks super impressive. Moving up on the card, we have Stephanie Edgar versus Luana Santos. Luana Santos gets it done via decision, unanimous decision, which was crazy to me. And one judge even gave her a 30-27 scorecard, if I'm not mistaken. This might be a hot take. And some people were saying in my live stream that I was biased because I picked Edgar, but I really don't care that much. I think there's a case to be made that Edgar won this fight 30-27. People don't know the judging criteria. Now, round one, I will say Santos was landing some good shots in round one, but it wasn't all that much. And then Edgar and her were clinching, and Edgar was landing a lot of knees to the body. And it was, honestly, round one was a toss-up. The second round, Edgar was landing shots in the clinch. You had a takedown from Santos where she didn't really do much with it, and then Edgar got back to her feet, was landing some shots on the feet. Santos was landing some jabs. And then at the end of the round, Santos got hurt with a couple shots from Edgar. Nothing crazy, but just stung a bit. And then in the third round, you had Santos who was completely gassed, just spamming the clinch over and over and over again. You had Herb Dean going, work, work. She was doing absolutely nothing but accepting knees to the body in the clinch. So I know it sounds crazy, but bare minimum, rounds 2 and round 3 should go to Edgar. I don't even think it's up for debate, to be quite honest. I don't know how you give rounds 2 or round 3 to Santos, but somehow one judge gave her all 3 rounds. I mean, absolutely delusional. And the other judges gave her 2 out of the 3 rounds, gave her 29-28. So I don't think those judges' scorecards are as bad because round 1, again, I think you could easily go to Santos. But round 2, I really don't think so. But again, super low level fight. Santos missed weight. I mean, this fight was super low level. The striking was horrific. Some of the worst striking I've ever seen. Santos showed some of the worst cardio I've ever seen. And she was literally stalling the entire third round and half of the second round. So absolutely disgusting performance by Luana Santos. Moving up on the card, we have Steve Garcia versus Melquizael Costa. What a crazy finish. Steve Garcia gets a second round KO. And the first round, Costa was kind of looking for a takedown, had his back the entire first round, kind of dumping him to his knees. And then, you had Steve Garcia work his way back to his feet. He was fighting the hands basically the entire round. You had Costa not really doing a whole lot, but kind of, knees to the thighs and then dropping him to the canvas, but couldn't cement the position, was constantly trying to get the hooks in. Garcia was blocking. He would get one hook in, but then Garcia would block the other hook. He was constantly fighting the hands, but Costa clearly won the first round. There was no doubt about that. It wasn't even close because the entire time Garcia's trying to get him off his back. Second round, I knew Garcia was going to come out with something to prove. And it was crazy how quick this finish happened. Essentially, Costa got a single leg early. Steve Garcia kind of reversed out of it. As they're both getting back to their feet, you have Garcia land a nasty knee, then a left hand that drops him. Just starts smashing him badly on the ground. It could have been stopped. Eventually ends up in full mount and then has the back, and then he locks in a choke. He literally, it could have already been stopped at this point. He literally chokes him out cold. He's out cold. Go back and watch the replay if you're not sure. I watched it a couple of times. Chokes him out cold, but then lets it go and then starts smashing his unconscious body with elbows. It literally reminded me of Dennis Bondar versus, I think it was Carlos Hernandez from earlier this year. It was a filthy KO by Steve Garcia. He came out with a point to prove in that second round. And from the second he hurt Costa, he was all over him, choked him out, brutalized him on the ground, choked him out. And then those elbows that just smashed him at the end. I mean, that was hard to watch. That literally looked like, okay, he's beating somebody to death. But nasty win by Steve Garcia. Didn't see that one coming. Solid win. Knew he was getting out grappled in the first. Still came out there throwing power in the second round and gets it done. Moving up on the card, we have Hyun Sung Park versus Shannon Ross. What's new? Shannon Ross gets finished in the second round. Really, this fight was actually pretty good. First round was back and forth. Both guys were landing shots. Park landed a nasty elbow in the first round. Park dropped Ross in the first round as well. Looked for the finish a little bit. Ended up kind of controlling him on the ground, dominating him on the ground a bit. I thought the first round was a 10-8 round for Park. Second round seemed like a closer round early. You had Ross landing big shots. Park looked like he's starting to slow down. The commentary team speculating about a potential leg injury, but Park was just landing the harder shots. Then you have a teep kick from Park that hurts Shannon Ross, and then he just swarms him, rips a left hand to the body, and just melts him and just finishes him off up against the fence. And, the left hook to the body, which was really just the final blow that really kind of sealed the fate of Shannon Ross, reminded me, and I'm not comparing Hyun Sung Park to Jose Aldo, but it kind of reminded me of some of the Jose Aldo body shots where he just brings the punch way back and just rips it to the body. It was filthy, but it all started off with a teep kick right to the liver that hurt Shannon Ross badly. So he gets it done in the second round. I don't know how much of an achievement that is for Park, considering Shannon Ross basically gets finished in every single fight, and that's most likely the end of his career, which is kind of sad. I think he's on like a 4 or 5 fight losing streak, all of which he got stopped in. But Park got it done. Looked pretty impressive doing it, but against the level of opponent, Shannon Ross, not all that great. But I've said for a long time, Shannon Ross actually isn't as bad as his record indicates. It's just his durability is a massive issue. Well, at least his chin didn't take a whole lot of damage this time. It was more of his body. Park gets it done in the second round. Moving up on the card, we have Kenan Song versus Kevin Jousset. I mean, this fight, Kevin Jousset just absolutely wrecked the lead leg of Kenan Song, was just pumping the jab. Song had some moments where he landed some good counters, but for the most part, first round, Jousset just dominating him with the jab and leg kick. Second round, more of the same, just kind of pumping the jab, kicking the leg. You had Kenan Song really start to get busted up in the second round. I think in the second round it was Jousset shot for a takedown. Looked like he was deep in on it. Looked like he was going to get it, but Song was able to defend, get to his knees, sprawl out. But it didn't really matter. It was just kind of mixing it in for Jousset. And then in the third round, Jousset was kind of tired. He was still pumping the jab. He was still throwing some leg kicks, kind of got away from him for a bit in the third round, started throwing him a little bit towards the end. And then the second half of the third round was a nonstop clinch fest. Both of them were tired. Jousset was tired, more tired than Song. And it really, the third round kind of left a bad taste in your mouth. The feeling I got from this fight is that if Jousset was really kind of putting his foot on the gas a little bit more, but he didn't have the stamina to, I think he could have found a finish in this fight and really had a statement win against Kenan Song. But overall, he took some shots. His chin looked okay. Song landed some big counter shots. and he just picked apart that lead leg over and over and over again. And the jab was just landing at will for Jousset, and he gets it done via unanimous decision. Moving up on the card, the first fight on the main card, we have André Muniz versus Yong Park. I thought this was another robbery. You had André Muniz get an early takedown, dominate Park for basically the entire first round, but then the last minute of the round, Muniz, or last like 30 seconds of the round, Muniz looks for a triangle, and Park ends up on top. It starts dropping elbows and shots, and I really thought the damage that he did in that last 30 seconds, Muniz did no damage the entire round, so I thought Park won the first round. I thought it was really not even debatable. You know, the scoring criteria is damage. Then the second round, Muniz got an early takedown and just, you know, basically dominated Park. I think there was times where Park would get up, but he would get dragged right back down, and the takedown defense didn't look that good, and Muniz would have his back and have positional control, but really never do any damage. But Park was never able to get out of that position, so it was clear 10-9 for Muniz in the second round. Then in the third round was basically more of the same from the first round, because Muniz gets a takedown, he gets the back, he even has the body triangle at one point, he even has both hooks in at one point, but somehow Park gets out in like the last 2 minutes or so, ends up on top, doing damage, landing shots. Muniz did no damage the whole time he was on top. He's been throwing very little ground and pound. And Park did some damage the last minute and a half, 2 minutes of round 3. I thought it should have been a 29-28 win for Yong Park. I thought he should have got it done. I mean, André Muniz, his striking didn't look that good. He was throwing some decent kicks early on. He gassed out in the third round. And André Muniz honestly just looks like SpongeBob with muscles. That's essentially what André Muniz looked like in this fight, and had no stamina at all. The jiu-jitsu, he gets to the back, and if he can't find a rear naked choke, he's like, oh, what do I do here? I don't know what to do. I can't do anything if I can't find a rear naked choke. So I think Muniz was overrated for a long time, and I thought he should have lost this fight. He had a massive size advantage on Yong Park, which I did not know, or I might even pick Muniz in this fight. But overall, I thought it was an abysmal performance for Muniz. I think Bo Nickel would absolutely smoke André Muniz right now. And I'm not even like super crazy high on Bo Nickel like some people are. My biggest takeaway from this fight is that André Muniz's coach's phone password is 505050, which they showed on the broadcast afterwards. That's my biggest takeaway. That's what I was paying attention to in this fight. But outside of that, it was just Muniz getting the back, not doing any damage. Park scrambling out for maybe 2 minutes total, 2.5 minutes total between the first and the third round, doing some damage, landing some elbows. And then he should have got the fight. He should have got rounds 1 and 3. It should have happened. Round 2, Muniz didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. He just grappled him, held on to him. And, you know, because Park didn't do any damage, you have to give it to Muniz for the positional control. But I thought this was another bad decision by the judges. Moving up on the card, we have Sumudaerji versus Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott gets a first round arm triangle. Kind of scrappy early. You have Sumudaerji landing some shots. You have Tim Elliott landing some shots. Then I think it was Tim Elliott caught a kick, starts lifting it over the head of Sumudaerji, and he can't get him down. Sumudaerji's kind of throwing, I think, while he's kind of bouncing on one foot. Tim Elliott lets it go, lands an elbow, and hurts Sumudaerji. And actually, it happened twice. It happened once early where Tim Elliott couldn't get the takedown. He let it go and landed a punch, and Sumudaerji kind of shook it off. And then maybe a minute later, the same thing happened. Tim Elliott caught a kick, held it up, but this time when he released, he threw a filthy elbow that hurt him badly. Then he shot in on a single leg, got a single leg, took him down, just starts mauling him on the ground, beating him up on the ground, and controlling him, and finds an arm triangle soon after that single leg. I think it was like maybe 45 seconds later. Tim Elliott steps in on short notice, fights Sumudaerji, and gets it done via submission. This cements my position that I would have picked Alan Nascimento via first round sub. If Tim Elliott's submitting him in the first round, I think Alan Nascimento most likely would have got it done. Sumudaerji, once he gets taken down, he doesn't have the best, ability to be able to get back up. He doesn't have the best ability to fight off submissions. And Tim Elliott goes out, and it was a nasty sub too. He got the arm triangle, locked it in. There was really no resistance from Sumudaerji because he already softened him up a bit. And then when he locked it in, Sumudaerji didn't want to tap, and Tim Elliott's just squeezing on it. And Sumudaerji was busted up from the shots he had taken earlier, and he sprayed out blood as he's being squeezed, and then he finally taps out. It was a filthy win by Tim Elliott on short notice. Moving up on the card, we have Nasrat Haqparast versus Jamie Mullarkey, a.k.a. Eustace from Courage the Cowardly Dog. Nasrat Haqparast hurts him bad early with the left hand, drops him, and then Mullarkey's trying to get up, but he's on all fours, and Haqparast just starts winging uppercuts over and over and over again. And finally, the referee steps in. I thought it was a bit of a late stoppage. I mean, from the second he got dropped, it was pretty much over. Those follow-up shots, it ended up being like 10, 11 uppercuts. And I think as he got up, like once he got back to his feet, he got smashed with some hooks afterwards. And then the ref finally jumped in. It was a bit late. I would have liked to have seen it stopped a little bit early, but we don't live in a perfect world. It wasn't as bad as Jalen Turner versus Bobby Green, but Nasrat Haqparast just hurt him and never let him off the hook. Had nasty killer instinct, and Jamie Mullarkey got finished brutally in the first round. Moving up on the card to the co-main event, we have Anthony Smith versus Khalil Rountree Jr. Khalil Rountree gets a third round TKO, and Khalil Rountree pretty much dominated this fight. I don't know if that's an exaggeration, but it was competitive for the first 2 rounds, but I had Khalil Rountree winning the first 2 rounds. They were both really slinging shots. Early, Rountree came out with this weird, like, he was pulling like a Jeremiah Wells where he was kind of circling around the cage really fast and not throwing a whole lot of shots. But as he started opening up, he started landing some shots. Anthony Smith was landing some teep kicks as well. You had Rountree just really stinging him with some jabs, and I think Rountree kind of clipped him and hurt him at the end. Also, Rountree throughout the fight was landing some nasty body kicks. The second round, you had some early combinations from Anthony Smith. Then, in the second round, Rountree stung Anthony Smith. I can't remember if it was once or twice. I think it was once. He stung him bad, and Anthony Smith was like kind of out on his feet, looked frozen, and Rountree just stares at him. Doesn't follow up or anything. Then Anthony Smith shoots in on a desperation takedown, even though Rountree doesn't really try to follow up. And as he shoots in on a single leg, basically, Rountree starts smashing him from there. Clearly won the second round. And then the third round, going into the third round, Anthony Smith's busted up. But it's looking like Khalil Rountree starting to tire out a little bit. So it's looking like, okay, maybe Anthony Smith can pull it off. Anthony Smith eats a nasty right uppercut in the third round, followed by a left hand. And it's just like dancing all over the place. At one point, I think he was doing the robot, and then next thing you know, he falls on the ground, and you have Khalil Rountree like lift his hand up like he's going to follow up, but he doesn't want to follow up. You have the referee looking at it, and then Anthony Smith starts doing a spinner-rooney and, spinning on his head and breakdancing, and then finally the ref says, okay, I've seen enough. I thought in real time, if that was like a title fight, I'd be like, that's a way early stoppage. But knowing the history of Anthony Smith, I have no problem with it, to be honest. I have no problem with the stoppage. I think it doesn't change the outcome. I think Khalil Rountree would have smashed him and killed him, regardless of if the ref stepped in now or stepped in 10 seconds. I think it was over. So I'm happy not to have to see Anthony Smith get really brutalized and killed on the ground in that point in time. But Khalil Rountree, I mean, he went out there and did what he had to do. He landed some good leg kicks, landed the jab. He took some shots. Anthony Smith was crowding him and landing some good shots. But for the most part, the only thing I can criticize Rountree for is the fight IQ. I mean, in the second round, I think he could have stone cold put Anthony Smith out. Anthony Smith was frozen on the feet. He does not follow up. He gave him like 30 seconds, 45 seconds before he even threw another shot. It was crazy. I could not believe it. And I can't remember for sure. There were so many fights tonight, but I think he might have stung him twice. I know he did sting him at the end of the first round, but I think he might have kind of hurt him twice. There was the one that was really bad, but it's like he wasn't willing to follow up for some reason. I don't know what it was. I don't know if he was looking for that viral kind of walk-off KO. And then in the post-fight, he says, the fans want me versus Alex Pereira, which I don't think any of the fans are really have been asking for, but maybe some people might now because he kind of put that idea out there. But for the most part, Khalil Rountree is going to have to fight his way up. I don't know who I would put him against. Maybe Nikita Krylov. I wouldn't mind at one point seeing the Johnny Walker rematch, but Johnny Walker has a fight coming up. But Khalil Rountree, on a long streak, gets a win over an out-of-shape, short-notice Anthony Smith, who's kind of on the verge of being a dead body. I think he probably needs to retire or go to power slap. But I still think, that was a decent test for Khalil Rountree under optimal circumstances for him. And he goes out there and makes Anthony Smith put on a break-dancing clinic in the third round, and he gets it done. Moving up the card to the main event, we have Song Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez. This fight looked like it was shaping up to be very, very compelling because the first round was pretty close. I thought Song Yadong just barely edged out the first round with some of the stuff he did towards the end. There was a lot of, leg kicks landing clean for both guys. There were some checked leg kicks. Song Yadong landed a couple combinations towards the end of the first round. The second round, Gutierrez was really having good distance management. He landed a front kick. I think it was in the second round. He was checking some kicks. He was landing some calf kicks of his own. Song was having trouble closing the distance. So going into the third round, I had it 1-1. I thought, okay, this fight's really getting interesting. And I felt like at the end of the second round, I'm like, okay, we're going to have to, Song's going to have to grapple more. In that second round, he got a takedown, but it was like a minute left and he didn't do a whole lot of damage with it. I said he needs to keep shooting on takedowns, mixing the grappling because he's not closing the distance really well. And then basically the rest of the fight, Song kind of, would land shots, mixing the grappling, land shots, mixing the grappling. And Chris Gutierrez lost 3, 4, and 5 and pretty much just got out grappled. And, Song Yadong was landing shots on the feet and then Chris Gutierrez was complaining the whole time. And at one point in the fight, Chris Gutierrez is grabbing inside the glove and the ref corrects him and he's like, I didn't even know I was doing it. And then he's complaining about back of the head shots, which weren't even really back of the head shots. And he just had nothing off his back at all. Absolutely nothing. Just laid there on his back with the Yadong in between his legs and just accepted the position. He was more worried about complaining to the ref and then talking with the crowd because I think there was an eye poke. Each guy got eye poked. I think it was in the first and second round. I think Yadong got poked in the first. Gutierrez got poked in the second. They were, he was going back and forth with the crowd because people were booing. Gutierrez he seemed like somebody who's very, very competitive, which obviously if you're a fighter, you probably have to be competitive. But he already felt like, okay, I already lost. Let me complain as much as possible rather than actually try to win because Song Yadong was on top of him, just landing elbows, landing ground and pound, busting him up, and he just had closed guard. He really didn't try to scramble out, really didn't try to get back to his feet. And in the 5th round in particular, you're going into the 5th round and you can think, okay, maybe he got the first 2. I don't think he would have. I don't know what the judges' scorecards were. Well, I guess the judges didn't give him any of the rounds, so I do know what the judges' scorecards are. One judge gave a 10-8. I don't know which round that would be for Song. But going into that 5th round, you could maybe think, okay, Gutierrez got 1 and 2. I wouldn't have given him that. I would have had 1 and 1. I had first round for Song, second round for Gutierrez. But going into the 5th round, you could think, okay, if I get this 5th round, maybe I can get a decision, especially with how wonky the judges have been tonight. Chris Gutierrez ends up like he's trying to roll for something and kind of, catch Yadong off guard, and Yadong just jumps into his guard and beats him up for the rest of the round. Literally just, I think it was like 1 minute into the 5th round. He just rolls to his back and basically doesn't even make Yadong shoot in on a takedown. Overall, the main event was super underwhelming. Yadong, I think, and we talked about this going into the fight, I think a lot of people were way too high on Yadong. They were elevating him off of a loss against Corey Sandhagen, but I still think Song Yadong is very good. He showed, look, I'm not able to close the distance. I'm not able to find my shots on the feet. I'm going to mix in the takedowns, and he kind of adjusted on the fly. I don't think that was his game plan coming in. Chris Gutierrez, hard to track down, hard to find clean shots on, but has absolutely no grappling. Imagine being ranked in the top 15 of the bantamweight division. You have no takedown defense and you have no jiu-jitsu off your back. That's what I saw from Chris Gutierrez. Just get him out of the top 15 immediately. And then the entire fight, he's just complaining. And then on top of that, he's grabbing the fence and he's throwing, I think he threw an illegal up kick at one point in time. But, it's just, he was more focused on complaining about, oh, I got hit in the back of the head, which he was even talking it when he stood up after the round. This happened already 2 minutes. It happened in the middle of the round. He stands up. He's complaining to the ref. Then he goes back to his corners, complaining to his corner. His corner's like, who cares? Go out and win the next round. Who cares about that? And it wasn't even, it might have been like 1 out of like 30 shots. Might have been 50-50, maybe a back of the head shot. It wasn't even like anything egregious. And meanwhile, he's grabbing the fence and cheating throughout. So, overall it was an underwhelming performance, but Song Yadong gets it done. All 3 judges gave him all 5 rounds. One judge even gave him a 10-8 round. I don't know which round that would have been. And then Song Yadong calls out Petr Yan. Petr Yan was tweeting out saying it was a boring fight. Song said, like your last fight, Yan. So I thought that was a good response from Song Yadong on the fly. It was, we're not always going to have perfect wins. Look at Corey Sandhagen versus Rob Font. There's plenty of fights where it's not going to be the most impressive win. I think there's a little bit of cold water thrown on kind of Song Yadong's hype in the bantamweight division, but I look forward to his future. He's still young. He's still improving. He's super well-rounded, and he gets it done against a game. Now, I don't even want to say a game Chris Gutierrez because I think he quit halfway through. So he gets it done against a tough Chris Gutierrez, at least in the first 2 rounds, and he went out there and really dominated him with relative ease. Even the round that I gave to Gutierrez was razor close, and you could have gave it to Song as well. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.